Howdy y'all, it's Hiddenpurple, and I'm back again for even more video game discussion. We're coming to the end of this particular series. This is going to be my last video discussing the merits of the Mass Effect trilogy. In this video, I'm going to talk a lot more about the story of the Mass Effect trilogy. This is largely due to the controversy surrounding the ending, and I'm going to talk about why I think that the Mass Effect 3 ending was, in my opinion, an extremely good ending. You're more than welcome to disagree with that, but I'd like to see if I can change your mind on the matter. So be warned, if you haven't played the trilogy, there will be spoilers ahead. Honestly though, it's been 6 years since the release of Mass Effect 3. So if you haven't played it yet, get your life together and go play it. I'll be here when you get back. So before diving into the deeper aspects of the story, I want to talk about the voice acting in Mass Effect. My very first playthrough of Mass Effect was with a male Shepard, and I never considered switching it up until a friend of mine told me that they preferred Jennifer Hale's interpretation over Mark Mear's interpretation of the character. So I went back and restarted the series as a female Shepard. I was surprised at how different the game felt playing FemShep. Before this moment, I had never realized just how much the delivery of a line could affect the story. Mind you, this was only back in 2012, and my opinions are still changing. After playing through as a female Shepard, I felt for a very long time that Mark Mear's interpretation was flat and hard to listen to. I thought it was boring and that it had a lot less character. When I expressed this to another friend of mine about a year ago, he had a different opinion that gave me a whole new way to look at the character. He said that Mark Mear's voice acting captured the behavior of someone suffering from PTSD. That throughout the series, Shepard loses touch with his emotions more and more as he experiences traumas of ever-increasing severity. So again, I went back and played through the series, and I did notice a subtle change of Mark Mear's line delivery throughout the series. It's not a huge difference, but that small change in behavior over time adds depth to the character. I can't say whether or not this was intentional, but it does highlight a few things about the psychology of a human and the different ways we cope with trauma. Both actors, Mark Mear and Jennifer Hale, are extremely talented, and they both did justice to the character in their own way. It just took me a while to realize that their interpretations, while different, were both incredible in their own right.
Please send this to an animal shelter for proper disposal, as a warship is not an appropriate... that is not okay.
Please send this to an animal shelter for proper disposal, as a warship is not an appropriate... Oh, that is not okay.
The Mass Effect trilogy is chock full of A-list and B-list talent for the hundreds of characters you meet throughout, and the line delivery goes a very long way in helping draw the players ever deeper into the universe. So most of what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the video is going to be the ending. Mass Effect 3's ending has gone down in history as one of the most disappointing endings of all time. I'd like to take some time to contest those claims, but first, let me tell you about my first impression of the ending and how I felt about it. And then I'll get into why I think the ending is so unpopular and why my opinion has changed from negative to positive in the last 5 years. So let's rewind to 2012. 17-year-old me has just gotten his hands on Mass Effect 3 and is voraciously tearing his way through the plot, ignoring schoolwork and friends to make his way through the game. I ate it up. The changes to the gameplay were amazing. The way the powers comboed seamlessly with one another, the improvements to the gunplay, the reintroduction of deeper RPG elements, the way I could interact with smaller elements of the story, settling disputes between common people around the Citadel and on the Normandy, how Mass Effect 3 made you feel like your Spectre status actually held weight. All of those factors and more engrossed me in the story more than I had ever been before. Finally, after around 40 hours of playing, I made it to the end of the game. I go through the dialogue with the Star Child, and the ending plays. I'm floored. Did I do something wrong? Was my first thought. I said, yeah, I have to have. So I went back and played through it again, only to get the same confusing and vague ending.
The fact that you were standing here, the first organic ever, proves it. But it also proves my solution won't work anymore.
Now, I wasn't outraged the same way that hundreds of thousands of other fans were. I never went into any kind of a rage about it, nor did I ever harass the developers over it. I was just confused. This wasn't the ending I was expecting, but then I got to thinking, what was the ending I was expecting? What could they have done differently to make the ending more satisfying? The question plagued me for a long time. I spent a lot of time over the years discussing it at length with friends of mine who were also avid fans of the series. For the most part, they shared my lack of outrage. Most of the people I knew personally had similar opinions to mine. Not really angry about it, just unsure how to feel. Honestly, what else did we expect? We're fighting a war on a pretty grand scale. How could we possibly have expected our decisions throughout the story to have affected anything other than the small-scale events of the game? I mean, the Crucible was designed to do one thing. It was a power source that would use the relay system as a weapon. So the only thing we could really affect was whether or not it made it to the Earth to be attached to the Citadel. The more I thought about it and the more I replayed the series, the more I remembered all of the small differences throughout the story. the way Conrad might react to seeing you depending on how you treated him in a previous entry, the war assets you might get in Mass Effect 3 if you spare a particular character in Mass Effect 2, how the story is affected if you kill Rex on Vermeer back in Mass Effect 1, what the game is like should you choose not to cure the genophage in Mass Effect 3. Choice has always been present in the series. That was never taken away from us. It was just limited to the self-contained narratives, the small stories. I was talking to my roommate recently about this conundrum, and he said something that I'm honestly still processing. He said, there's a sort of beauty in a story that gives you the illusion of choice. That had me stunned. I mean, that's pretty much what Mass Effect did. Throughout the story, you're made to feel like this force that could alter the course of galactic history. To a certain extent, you did. At the end of the day, though, what could Shepard or anyone else really do to change the course of this story? When you really think about it, Shepard's story isn't the only one out there. The Reaper War wasn't won by Shepard alone. There were trillions of other stories going on at the same time. Each of those individuals made their own choices, and all of these choices culminated in the final confrontation with the Reapers in the Sol system. Shepard's choices never really mattered. Not in the grand scheme of things. So after all these years of talking and thinking on it, I've come to the conclusion that the ending of Mass Effect 3 was actually a pretty good one. Now, that can be debated, and that's really only my opinion, but still, I feel that Mass Effect 3's ending gets a bad rap. The team at BioWare worked countless hours writing a story, and it really does feel like it all came together and made for a wonderful goodbye to a series that I truly love. If you're still not convinced, though, if you think that there's something better they could have done with the ending, then I'd love to hear your thoughts. I personally do enjoy the ending. There are ideas floating around out there that might have made for a more narratively sound ending, but this is the one we've got. I was a fan of the indoctrination theory for a long time, which was an extremely well thought out theory, and the effort into putting it all together must have been titanic. There's also the ending that Drew Karpyshyn originally had planned, which never really saw the light of day. That one would have been a tough sell though, given its reliance on the heat death theory, which I suspect a majority of the population is completely unaware of, so that ending might have been just as contentious as this one. Honestly, the ending we got fit more thematically with the rest of the series when you think about it. Throughout Mass Effect, we meet different artificial intelligences, all of whom were created in their own unique ways. The Geth, the Rogue AIs in Mass Effect 1, and the Reapers. The ending of the Mass Effect trilogy suggested that the cycle was a solution to the problem of organic life creating AI that will inevitably wipe them out. This idea fits with the rest of the series, as throughout the series we're put in a position where we have to wonder about the implications of artificial intelligence. This, to me, was one of the major themes of the series, and an ending about the heat death just wouldn't have fit as thematically into the ending as an ending about synthetic versus organic life. Something else that was pointed out to me by a friend was that there are more than just the three endings that everybody is always up in arms about. Aside from the destruction, synthesis, and control endings, there's also the ending born of inaction. You can achieve this ending by turning and firing a shot at the Star Child, which will continue the cycle, and then the cycle after ours will find Liara's time capsule and use that to defeat the Reapers. There is also something to be said for the way the endings are affected by your war assets. I've personally never had this happen, but if you have a score lower than 1,750, the end to the Reaper War comes at a pretty brutal cost. Humanity will be effectively wiped out in the process, and so will a majority of the Allied fleets. The one reason I've never achieved these endings is because it's actually surprisingly hard to do. You have to make sure not to play any of the multiplayer, as this provides a multiplier to your war asset score, and you have to be sure to rush through the game ignoring all bonus assets, aside from the assets provided by the main story missions. Now that I'm aware of this though, I might go back and see just how bad things get if I make all of the wrong choices throughout the trilogy. I'll let you know how it goes. Before wrapping up, I want to take some time to talk about the DLCs in Mass Effect 3. I had a big issue with the launch DLC From Ashes, which charged you $10 for a character that was absolutely integral to the plot. That was probably my personal biggest issue with Mass Effect 3. The three big content drops were Leviathan, Omega, and Citadel. I thoroughly enjoyed the Leviathan DLC, but I understand that not everybody felt the same way I did. To me, it had an interesting plot hook, and it revealed even more about the universe that I hadn't already been aware of. I was absolutely blown away at the way there was an entire DLC made around a single planet description. Most of you might not know this, but if you head to the Hades Gamma Cluster and look at the planet Jartar in the Dis system, you'll be able to read about the Leviathan of Dis. This information was in Mass Effect 3 from launch, and an eagle-eyed player might have noticed this before the announcement of the DLC's focus. The way they integrated such a small detail into the larger plot of the game really blew me away. The Omega DLC was unfortunately a massive disappointment. The story was boring, the characters were boring, the new enemies never appeared again anywhere else. It had basically no effect on the rest of the story, and it didn't come close to living up to my expectation. I had waited since launch for this DLC, which had been teased during the main plot, and what I got disappointed in a lot of big ways. Which is why you shouldn't be surprised to hear that Montreal, the team behind Mass Effect Andromeda, was the team that put together Omega. So Montreal had two major projects before they were canned, and they were both very poorly received. I'll dive more into this in a future video about Mass Effect Andromeda. Now the Citadel DLC, that was something truly special. Of all the DLCs throughout this trilogy, this one is truly and almost inarguably the best. Standing next to juggernauts like Arrival and Lair of the Shadow Broker, Citadel manages to set itself apart and tell a unique and heart-wrenching story. I won't be showing any footage of this as it's an experience that you should 100% experience blind. If you're a fan of this series and you haven't played Citadel, you need to go back and play it. Citadel was Mass Effect's true swan song, the last hurrah before BioWare stopped supporting Mass Effect 3. It was absolutely amazing, and I can't give it enough praise. Go pick it up and play it as soon as you possibly can. You will not regret it. So, anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you liked the video and want to support my channel, give me a like or a share. Give me a comment. Any interactions help. Tell me your thoughts on the Mass Effect trilogy. Do you like the ending or do you hate it? Everyone is more than welcome to share their own opinions. I'd be thrilled to hear all of your thoughts. I should go.